And as for your teeth and eating candy, you wait and see. You're gonna have bad ones in a few years.
I told Nellie her teeth would fall out. She didn't care. She'd just buy teeth like her mother has.
What if the heartwarming pioneer life of Little House on the Prairie wasn't as innocent as it seemed? Behind the charming cabins and wholesome lessons were real-life feuds, shocking secrets, and off-screen chaos that never made it to air. From unexpected friendships and on-set pranks to scandals, bloopers, and emotional fallout, this is the untold truth behind one of television's most beloved series. Whether you grew up watching Little House on the Prairie when it first aired, or discovered it years later through reruns, there's no denying its long-lasting impact. The show presented a picture of rural life in 19th century America that was wholesome, warm, and often emotional. But what played out behind the scenes was often very different from the touching moments viewers saw on screen. On screen, beneath the bonnets, wooden caverns, and pioneer values, was a set filled with real people, each with their own quirks, friendships, disagreements, and secrets. One of the more surprising contrasts was the relationship between the characters Laura Ingalls and Nellie Olson. On the show, they were portrayed as bitter rivals, constantly at odds. In real life, though, things couldn't have been more different. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura, and Alison Andream, who played Nellie, were actually best friends. Off-screen, the two spent a lot of time together, shared jokes, and even had sleepovers. According to interviews and Gilbert's own memoir, their bond was genuine and they enjoyed each other's company when the cameras weren't rolling. This behind-the-scenes friendship gave them the comfort and confidence to portray enemies convincingly on screen. But not all relationships on the set were so light-hearted. Melissa Gilbert was just a teenager when she began filming romantic scenes with Dean Butler, who played her love interest, Almanzo Wilder. At the time of their first on-screen kiss, Gilbert was only 15, while Butler was 23. Understandably, she felt extremely nervous and uncomfortable. That kiss wasn't just a fictional moment, it was her real first kiss as well. It was such a difficult situation that Gilbert went to Michael Landon, the show's lead actor, director, and a father figure to her, to express her concerns. Landon reportedly took the issue seriously and convinced the producers to tone the scene down, ultimately changing it to a more innocent peck on the cheek. Gilbert's relationship with Landon was complicated. After her own adoptive father died by suicide when she was 11, Landon filled that emotional void. They were incredibly close for years and Gilbert admired him deeply. But things changed when Landon divorced his wife and began a relationship with a much younger woman on set, a makeup artist named Cindy Clerico. This hit Gilbert hard, especially because of her own parents' earlier divorce. She felt personally let down and cut off contact with him for a time. Despite this, they reconciled years later when Landon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and Gilbert even named one of her children after him. Not all on-set pranks were received as emotionally as those moments. Landon was known for having a strong sense of humor. One of his more outrageous habits was practical joking. Alison Harngrim and Melissa Gilbert, inspired by Landon's antics, once pranked another cast member by covering a toilet with plastic wrap. Landon himself was also known to take things further. For example, in one story shared by actress Rachel Greenbush, who played Carrie Ingalls, Landon would put frogs in his mouth during breaks, then open his mouth to reveal them, giving the crew quite the shock. These moments helped ease tensions on long shooting days and kept spirits high, especially among the younger actors. There were also attempts to tease castmates in ways that might be considered a bit mean-spirited today. Steve Tracy, who played Percival, and Arngrim, who was his on-screen wife, would often play up their romantic scenes to an exaggerated level, just to get a reaction from Gilbert. They'd perform overly dramatic kisses or make-out sessions in front of her in a playful, joking way. At the time, Gilbert was very shy and still figuring out how to deal with on-screen intimacy, so the antics sometimes got to her. That said, it wasn't done with cruelty, more as a form of playful teasing among friends. Interestingly, Tracy was gay, and his close friendship with Arngrim allowed for a comfortable dynamic where they could push boundaries without any real romantic tension between them. On the other hand, not all cast relationships were so positive. Melissa Sue Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls, didn't have the same close bond with Gilbert. In fact, they barely got along. According to Gilbert, there was a noticeable coldness from Anderson throughout the years they worked together. The two had a hard time relating to each other, and their relationship reportedly remained distant well after the show ended. Gilbert described Anderson as snobby and said she often acted superior, though the exact reasons for the tension between them have never been fully explained. Anderson herself hasn't publicly responded to those claims, so we only have one side of the story. However, other cast members also described Anderson as being reserved or standoffish, possibly because of how protective her mother was, or how she was raised. Gilbert and her brother Jonathan Gilbert, who played Willie Oleson, were also part of the show. In real life, they were adopted siblings. Jonathan portrayed the mischievous younger brother of Nellie on the show, often getting caught up in her schemes. Despite their sibling bond off-screen, Melissa Gilbert revealed in her autobiography that the two later became estranged. After the show ended, Jonathan left acting and went into finance. He reportedly lives a private life today, working as a stockbroker in New York. The reasons behind their distance remain largely personal, but Gilbert has expressed hope that they might reconnect someday. There was also the matter of Michael Landon's personal struggles, which were kept mostly out of the public eye during the show's run. One of the most well-known and concerning issues was his drinking. According to Gilbert's memoir and other accounts from the set, Landon would often start his mornings with coffee mixed with alcohol. Crew members later admitted that it wasn't unusual for him to keep drinking throughout the day. He managed to maintain a professional appearance, but over time, the effects of his drinking became more obvious. It's said that the crew would go through 2 or even 3 cases of beer on particularly stressful days of filming. While the set still functioned and the show remained a hit, those who were there recall that it wasn't always a healthy environment. Landon's image was carefully maintained in front of the cameras, not just emotionally, but physically as well. Known for his thick, wavy, dark hair, it turns out that his signature look was not entirely natural. His real hair color was a duller shade of brown, and he regularly had it dyed to achieve that rich brunette tone. As he got older and his hair began to grey, the lighting on set sometimes caused his dyed hair to appear purplish under the studio lights. This led to additional work for the show's hair and makeup team, who would have to bring in colorists to correct the hue. All of this goes to show that Little House on the Prairie, while remembered for its heartwarming stories and moral lessons, was created by people who were far from perfect. They had their own personal issues, made mistakes, laughed, argued, and occasionally clashed. It's these real human dynamics that make the show's success even more impressive. The fact that the cast and crew were able to create something so timeless despite everything happening behind the scenes speaks volumes about their professionalism and talent. Throughout its run, Little House addressed a wide range of topics that included addiction, sexual assault, racism, prejudice, disabilities, adoption, and poverty. These weren't just passing references either. The episodes often centered around these challenges, giving them real weight and emotional depth. For example, episodes dealing with addiction didn't shy away from showing the consequences that substance abuse had on individuals and their families. In some cases, these themes hit close to home for the cast and crew as well, making the show's message even more meaningful. At the time the show aired, many family-oriented programs avoided such themes altogether. This made Little House stand out. While other shows stuck to comedy or light drama, Little House pushed boundaries. It managed to do this while maintaining its family-friendly image, which made its efforts even more impressive. Viewers came to expect more than just tales of prairie life. They tuned in for stories that reflected the real human experience, even if it was packaged in the setting of 19th century America. Beyond the themes, the cast itself reflected a kind of modern complexity. On screen, characters were part of the same families or close-knit communities, but off-screen the reality was often far more complicated. One example of this was the relationship between Jonathan Gilbert and Melissa Gilbert. On the show, Jonathan played Willie Oleson, Nellie's younger brother. In real life, Jonathan and Melissa were adopted siblings. Although they were raised in the same household and worked together on set for years, they later became estranged as adults. According to Melissa Gilbert's memoir, the two grew apart after the show ended, and they've remained distant ever since. Jonathan left acting and pursued a career in finance. He earned an MBA and currently works as a stockbroker in New York. Melissa, meanwhile, stayed in the spotlight, continuing her acting career, and eventually taking on leadership roles, including serving as president of the Screen Actors Guild from 2001 to 2005. In 2016, she even entered politics, running for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives in Michigan. However, she had to withdraw from the race due to health complications related to a spinal injury. Another relationship that didn't mirror the warmth shown on screen was the one between Melissa Gilbert and Melissa Sue Anderson. While their characters, Laura and Mary Ingalls, were sisters who shared many touching moments, the actresses didn't get along in real life. Tension between the two developed early on and continued throughout the series. By all accounts, it wasn't a simple case of clashing personalities for a few weeks. It was an ongoing issue that made things uncomfortable on set. Their fellow cast members often noticed the divide, and many reportedly tried to avoid getting caught in the middle of it. Melissa Gilbert wrote openly about their strained relationship in her book Prairie, where she described Anderson as cold and difficult to work with. She admitted she never understood why Anderson was distant, but felt that Anderson didn't want to be part of the group. Some have speculated that Anderson's behavior might have been influenced by her overprotective upbringing or a lack of experience socializing with peers her age. Whatever the cause, the two actresses never reconciled, and Anderson has largely stayed silent about the conflict. To this day, the exact reasons behind the feud remain a mystery. Despite the occasional friction, the show still managed to bring together a cast that worked hard and delivered strong performances. But the reality of working on a show with heavy themes, long shooting days, and complicated relationships wasn't always easy. As mentioned in part 1, there were days when tensions ran high and alcohol flowed more freely than expected on a family drama set. The emotional demands of the show were real, especially for the younger cast members who had to navigate adult topics at a young age, often without much experience or emotional preparation. Still, for all its behind-the-scenes drama, Little House on the Prairie served an important cultural function. It was a show that made the decision not to ignore difficult subjects, even if that made some episodes hard to watch. For example, in one storyline, a character was raped, a scene that shocked audiences at the time, given the show's usual tone. In another, a beloved character became addicted to morphine after being injured. These weren't just dramatic plot twists. They were carefully written stories that encouraged viewers to think and feel. The show aimed to start conversations and, in many cases, succeeded. What made these stories even more powerful was the setting in which they were told. The backdrop of rural pioneer life allowed the show to explore issues in a unique way. Problems like racism or class prejudice weren't set in a modern urban environment, but rather within a tight-knit farming community, which helped audiences see these issues from a different perspective. This approach not only made the show more relatable to a broader audience, it also provided a historical context that reminded viewers these problems were not new. The show's depiction of disabilities also broke ground. Characters who were blind, deaf, or living with other challenges were not treated as mere side stories. Their experiences were given emotional depth and treated with respect. Mary Ingalls, played by Melissa Sue Anderson, became blind following an illness, and her journey was shown over several seasons. Rather than simply write her out, the show followed her character as she adapted, found a new path in life, and continued to grow. This was not common in shows of the time, and it gave representation to a group of people who were often ignored by mainstream media. Adoption was another topic the show explored. Several characters were adopted into the Ingalls family, including Albert, James, and Cassandra. These storylines looked at the emotional complexity of adoption. the trauma some children carried with them, and the effort it took to build trust and connection. These themes resonated with many families and helped normalize the idea of adoption for viewers who might have never considered it. The producers and writers also wove in real historical details, grounding the stories in authenticity. Laura Ingalls Wilder's original books, though fictionalized, were inspired by her actual childhood, her family's experiences during the westward expansion of the United States helped shape the show's narrative, giving it a sense of realism that made even the more dramatic moments feel grounded in truth. The books were already popular by the time the show aired, but the series expanded on them, taking creative liberties to build more complex, issue-driven stories. By taking on such a wide range of topics, Little House on the Prairie didn't just entertain, it educated. While it wasn't a documentary, it did offer viewers an opportunity to engage with serious ideas within a familiar and emotionally resonant setting. It was this blend of heart, history, and honesty that helped the show earn a lasting place in television history. For all its limitations and occasional missteps, the show deserves credit for pushing boundaries at a time when most programs aimed to avoid controversy. It tackled the harsh realities of pioneer life while also reflecting the challenges of the present day. The result was a show that was far more than just nostalgic entertainment. It was a series that dared to ask difficult questions and offered no easy answers. One of the more amusing oversights happened with Laura's pregnancy storyline. According to fans and even cast members like Melissa Gilbert, the character of Laura announced her pregnancy in one episode that clearly took place during a warm season. However, many episodes later, again in the heat of summer, she was still pregnant. Based on the timeline of the show, Laura's pregnancy seemed to last more than a year, far longer than expected. Whether due to shooting schedules or continuity planning errors, the result is a pregnancy that stretches far beyond 9 months, something that didn't go unnoticed by dedicated fans. Another standout blooper occurred in Season 8 in an episode called Wave of the Future. In this storyline, Nellie's restaurant is turned into a franchise model, and the story draws comparisons to modern fast food chains. What really caught viewers off guard, though, was the appearance of a character based on Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. The problem? Colonel Sanders wasn't even born until 1890, and KFC didn't exist until the 1950 S's. Since Little House on the Prairie is set in the late 1800 S's, this scene is historically impossible, making it one of the more glaring anachronisms in the show. Yet another amusing moment happened in the episode The Odyssey from Season 5. During a dramatic scene, a character is thrown from a moving train. It's meant to be an intense and suspenseful moment, but if you look closely, you can spot a dummy being used in place of a real actor. The switch is quite obvious on screen. The dummy is stiff and lands far too perfectly, while a stuntman rolls more naturally nearby. The contrast is so noticeable that it's often mentioned by fans as one of the funniest accidental moments in the show's run. Some of the mistakes were less dramatic but still noticeable to eagle-eyed viewers. For instance, in at least 2 different episodes, The Monster of Walnut Grove and The Music Box, noisy tree branches can be seen and heard rustling right outside the upstairs bedroom window next to the girl's bed. The only issue is that there is no such tree next to that window in any other episode. It appears this was either stock footage reused or an added sound effect for atmosphere. While a minor detail, it highlights how continuity could sometimes slip through the cracks, especially on a show that required outdoor filming in various conditions. Another frequent continuity issue was with props, particularly quilts and costumes. One quilt in particular, a mostly white one with small, colourful blocks arranged in a pattern similar to a double wedding ring design, makes repeated appearances across various beds in different houses. It's been spotted on the beds of the Wholesomes, the Ingalls, and even minor characters, which wouldn't make sense in the context of the story. This likely happened because the show reused props and wardrobe items to save money and time, a common practice in television during that era. While it doesn't detract from the storyline, it's the kind of detail that sharp-eyed fans enjoy pointing out. Wardrobe choices on the show also occasionally fell out of step with the time period. Though Little House on the Prairie was set in the 1870s and 1880s, some of the characters, particularly the women, were sometimes dressed in outfits that looked far more modern. Caroline Ingalls, played by Karen Grassel, was seen in scenes wearing a bra, which wasn't invented until 1912. Some hairstyles, especially the use of perms and more relaxed, flowing hair, also felt more like 1970s trends than styles women would have worn in the 19th century. Melissa Gilbert has acknowledged in interviews that her own hair was often longer and more styled than it should have been for a character like Laura Ingalls. Fans have also pointed out inconsistencies in the storylines themselves. A notable example involves the character Albert, who was adopted by the Ingalls family. In one made-for-TV movie, it's strongly implied that Albert dies, yet in another episode, he's said to have grown up and become the town doctor. The conflicting information about his fate has been a long-standing debate among fans. One Reddit user even joked about the inconsistency with their partner, who surprised them with a personalized video from Melissa Gilbert. In the video, Gilbert playfully acknowledged the confusion and offered a humorous explanation, suggesting Albert may have returned as a zombie doctor in Walnut Grove. Then there's the matter of how characters didn't seem to age in line with the show's timeline. In the final episode, titled The Last Farewell, the story is set in the year 1901, about 14 years after the events of the 9th season. However, almost none of the characters appear to have aged significantly. Adults who should be in their 60s or 70s still look much the same, and children who were 10 or 12 in the earlier seasons seem to have grown only slightly. Even Laura, whose voiceover mentions it's spring 1887 in the 9th season's premiere, looks nearly identical by the time of the 1901 setting. This visual inconsistency is noticeable, particularly for fans who follow the show's timeline closely. Beyond the bloopers and continuity errors, the show also had a lighter side thanks to the cast's love of pranks and jokes. Michael Landon, who starred as Charles Ingalls and directed many of the episodes, was well known for his sense of humor. He often played practical jokes on the cast and crew. One recurring prank involved frogs. Rachel Greenbush, who played Carrie, recalled how she and Melissa Gilbert would go to the creek to catch frogs during filming breaks. They'd bring the frogs back to Landon, who would then put them in his mouth and surprise unsuspecting crew members by opening wide and letting the frogs jump out. While unusual, this kind of humor kept the mood light on set and helped build a sense of camaraderie among the cast. Despite the serious storylines and tough subjects, Little House on the Prairie was still a production with human beings, tight deadlines, and unpredictable outdoor settings. Mistakes were bound to happen. Whether it was an out-of-place costume, an awkwardly placed dummy, or a suspiciously long pregnancy, the show wasn't immune to the typical hiccups that come with making television. What makes these bloopers especially interesting is how they've contributed to the show's legacy. Rather than take away from the series, they've become part of the charm. Fans who have watched the show multiple times often enjoy spotting the errors and sharing them with others. In many ways, these imperfections remind us that the series was made by real people doing their best under the constraints of time, budget, and technology of the day. Even with these errors, Little House on the Prairie remains a beloved part of television history. The mistakes are almost like hidden Easter eggs, little surprises that don't distract from the emotional core of the series, but add another layer of connection for longtime viewers. They offer a bit of fun, a few laughs, and an understanding that no show, no matter how iconic, is perfect. Michael Landon played a central role in the creation and success of the series. Known for his portrayal of Charles Ingalls, he wasn't just a lead actor, he also directed, wrote, and produced a significant portion of the episodes. Landon was heavily involved in shaping the narrative and tone of the show, especially during the first 8 seasons. In total, he directed 90 out of 204 episodes. This contribution was so significant that when he eventually stepped away from acting in the show to focus more on producing and directing, the shift was noticeable. The 9th season, which saw a new family move into the iconic Little House, and Melissa Gilbert's Laura step into the lead role, marked a rebranded continuation called Little House: A New Beginning. Despite the show's strong following and enduring popularity, the series came to a close with a dramatic and somewhat unexpected ending. Little House: The Last Farewell aired as a television movie and featured a powerful final act. Walnut Grove, the town where the series took place, was blown up. The decision to destroy the town was symbolic and practical. Michael Landon explained that when the show ended, the production team wanted to prevent the set from being reused by other shows or left to deteriorate. Rather than see the carefully crafted buildings fall into disrepair or be turned into something unrecognizable, they chose to end things on their own terms. The explosion also served as a definitive conclusion to a series that had been such a big part of television for nearly a decade. Off-screen, Landon had a reputation for being charismatic and approachable. Many of his co-stars described him as a father figure, especially the younger cast members like Melissa Gilbert and Melissa Sue Anderson. Alison Armgrim, who played Nellie Oleson, spoke fondly of him in interviews, recalling both his talent and his fondness for practical jokes. In a 2018 interview, she described how Landon had a unique way of making everyone feel welcome on set. His sense of humor, combined with a clear creative vision, helped foster a strong team dynamic, even during stressful or emotional scenes. But Landon's life wasn't without its challenges. Born as Eugene Maurice Orowitz in 1936 in Queens, New York, Landon had a difficult childhood. His mother reportedly struggled with mental health issues and made several attempts to end her life, one of which Landon personally intervened in during a family trip. These early experiences left a lasting impression on him and contributed to the emotional depth he brought to his roles. Landon's childhood also included deeply personal struggles like bedwetting, which he later admitted had been made worse by the stress at home. According to an unauthorized biography, his mother would sometimes hang his wet sheets outside for the neighbors to see, something that deeply embarrassed and traumatized him. Despite those early struggles, Landon built an extraordinary career. He rose to fame with a starring role on Bonanza before moving on to Little House on the Prairie. Later, he created and starred in Highway to Heaven, continuing his legacy of heartfelt television. Tragically, in 1991, Landon died from pancreatic cancer at just 54 years old. His death was mourned by fans and colleagues alike, and many cast members from Little House spoke publicly about how deeply his passing affected them. Melissa Gilbert, who had drifted apart from Landon during her teenage years, eventually reconciled with him before his death. She later named one of her children Michael in his honor, a gesture that reflected the importance of their relationship. Financially, Landon was by far the most successful of the show's stars. At the time of his death, his estate was valued between $8 and $10 million per child. He had 9 children. His son, Michael Landon Jr., went on to build a successful career in his own right as a director and producer, working on films and television projects that often mirrored the wholesome moral themes his father had championed. Other cast members found varying levels of success after the show ended. Karen Grassel, who played Caroline Ingalls, continued acting but never achieved a role as prominent as the one she had on Little House. She appeared in a number of films and television series, including Harry's War and Wyatt Earp, but mostly stayed out of the public eye. Her current net worth is estimated to be around $500,000, a modest sum compared to many modern television stars, but still reflective of a steady career. Melissa Gilbert's post-Little House journey was more high-profile. After the show ended, she stayed in the entertainment industry and worked on a range of projects. In addition to acting, she took on leadership roles, becoming president of the Screen Actors Guild. Her involvement in union leadership marked a shift from child star to industry advocate. In 2016, Gilbert entered politics, running as a Democratic candidate for Michigan's 8th congressional district. Though she was the presumptive nominee, health issues forced her to withdraw from the race. Today, her net worth is estimated at around $500,000. Her life has been a mix of public achievements and personal challenges. she remains a recognizable figure in American pop culture. Other members of the cast, such as the Greenbush twins, Lindsay and Sydney, who shared the role of Carrie Ingalls, stepped away from acting altogether. Their combined net worth is estimated to fall somewhere between $1 and $5 million. They've led relatively private lives since their time on the show, occasionally appearing at fan events or interviews to reflect on their unique childhood experience in television. As for Jonathan Gilbert, who played Willie Olson and is Melissa Gilbert's adopted brother, he left acting entirely and pursued a career in finance. He earned a degree in business and currently works as a stockbroker in New York. Unlike many of his co-stars, he has kept a low profile and stayed out of the spotlight. His relationship with Melissa Gilbert reportedly became strained after the show, and they've remained estranged into adulthood. Looking back, Little House on the Prairie wasn't just a nostalgic look at pioneer life. It was a cultural phenomenon that shaped the lives of its cast in deeply personal ways. The series ended with emotional closure on screen, but for many of those involved, the experience stayed with them long after the camera stopped rolling. Whether it was the friendships they formed, the challenges they faced, or the memories they made, Little House left a lasting imprint. Even today, reruns of the show continue to attract viewers. New generations are discovering the world of Walnut Grove, finding comfort in its stories and characters. While the sets are gone and many of the cast have moved on, the values, struggles, and triumphs portrayed in the show still resonate. It's a reminder that good storytelling doesn't age, and neither does the emotional impact of a show that knew how to connect with its audience on a deeper level. In the end, the legacy of Little House on the Prairie is a mixture of fact and fiction, of crafted narratives and real-life consequences. Its lasting popularity is not just because of what happened on screen, but because of the humanity behind it, the people, the flaws, the laughter, and the loss. It's that blend that continues to draw people back, decades after the final episode aired.